It was another lackluster night for the Buds. What do they need to do to get it back on track? We'll discuss it here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs Center podcast hosted by myself, David Morassutti, and joining me today, because Mike is making his way back today from the Sunshine State, is my good old friend James from Offside Hockey Talk. James, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Appreciate you coming on. And just a reminder, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win or lose your $5 bet, your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And I'm sure many of you, like myself, made some nice donations over at FanDuel on the FanDuel app this weekend. If you bet on anything Leafs related against the Canucks, you came up with a good old zip, just like the Leafs did against the Canucks. A nice, tidy 3-0 loss. Just what a way to do it. Like let's go through, James, everything that was happening with the Leafs going into this game. They're coming off a pretty brutal 6-3 loss to the Hurricanes. The Vancouver Canucks were playing the same Hurricanes team the night before. They could not get out of Carolina in time. They had to go in a late flight into Toronto. So second night of a back-to-back and travel issues. In past years, we would have said, you know what, I don't know if the Leafs are going to do this because they're going to underestimate the opponent, or the opponent's going to now have this extra motivation to want to stick it to the Leafs. We're like, no, this is Craig Berube's Leafs. This isn't the Sheldon Keefe Leafs. This is going to be totally different. Boy, were many people, including myself, wrong about that. Because it didn't not look like the Craig Berube Leafs. This looked, it was a bit more of the Sheldon Keefe Leafs. If I'm not gonna lie here.
Listen, I mean, okay, so we win 5 in a row. We lose to Carolina. You expect some sort of bounce back, obviously, on Saturday night. A little bit of jump. Pacioretty back in. Lines are where they need to be. Everybody should be feeling themselves Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. They came out flat. There was no energy. No. They had a lot of energy against Carolina in that first period. And for me, that game felt like, hey, we had our foot on the gas. We're winning. We're doing everything we need to do. And then they got complacent and, basically got beat up along the boards all night long. You go to Saturday night, they never had it for 1 second. No passes. Everything was incomplete. It looked just gross. Nothing was going the way they needed to do. There's no fluidity to the game. So to me, Saturday night, you look at it and say, yeah, Keefe Leafs for sure. But at the same time, I mean, something's got to give. And then the after messages from all the players and coaches, it differs from who you talk to, what clique you're talking to. So
it's just one of those things where you knew that this just was not their game. This is not going to be their game. And I mean, we had one of our Discord members at the game, and he said it was so lifeless there. It was like, imagine Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. It's the biggest ticket of the week, especially with a Canadian team. I mean, if you're a Canucks fan that went to the game, oh, you had the time of your life.
Yep.
I heard there was quite a few Canucks fans there, as usually are, this in these sort of situations. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's obviously inexcusable for a team to have an effort like that. And I guess the also inexcusable part is, you gave Joseph Woll the night off. I thought maybe you go back to him just because
I did
you
too.
want to see how he bounces back after a loss. I thought, I understand maybe they're trying to manage the workload a little bit, but I don't think that would have been the opportunity to do it personally. We have Dennis Hill to be in that. That at times that he has to kind of get himself settled into the game. So, like, especially against last week against Philly, that first goal he let in, it was like, ugh.
Yeah.
And then rest of it was fine because the rest of the team picked them up the rest of the game. It was almost like the Vancouver Canucks got that goal early and they're like, yeah, we got this. And to me, that was the part that really annoyed me, is that you allow an early goal, show some fight, show some pushback. There was none of that, right? You had how many goals that were from the point or just guys beating out your defenders in front of the net, tips and things like that. It wasn't like there were, small breakdowns and guys were open in front of the net, or a guy, Vancouver had some odd man rushes or anything. It's just it was a competitive loss based on everything that happened in that game.
There was just so many missed assignments.
Yeah.
And there was no energy when things did happen, whether they crowded the goaltender or Nylander got caught with a stick from Miller. There's a lot of different things where you say, hey, there should have been some pushback, some jump, a little moxie, jam, whatever you want to call it. This team's been known for. It's been a calling card this year. They've been sticking up for each other and doing things in previous years that you don't see, which brings energy and feeds it through this lineup. There was none of that on Saturday night. There was no coming after guys when hits were thrown or anything. And I'm not talking dirty stuff. I'm just talking a little response to get a little scrum going, get the juices flowing, and get guys into it. There was none of that on the Leafs side at all. And that's something I think sorely was missing. And you look at a guy, I know he's, a little bit older, but Pacioretty's been throwing those hard hits and being the guy, the linchpin that really gets everybody kind of into that kind of play. Or you even look at a McCabe or something like that, but McCabe's not in the lineup, and maybe they're missing his element. Maybe he's a guy that really is counted on for some of that stuff. As much as he wears the goat horns for some plays, he may also be a catalyst for getting this team sparked up and going.
I should also remind people, and I did in the episode coming into this game, this is not a Canucks team that's been playing very well.
Nope.
They have been brutal this last stretch. They had lost their last 4 games coming into this game. I think 4 to 5 games. Okay.
Yep.
Shut out twice in the span of a week. Okay, coming into this road trip that they were on. They got shut out the night before by Dustin Tokarski. Okay. Like, there were so many things I could have said. This is a good opportunity for the Leafs to take advantage of a team that's been struggling. The Leafs only had 20 shots on goal. Vancouver only had 18 themselves. So it's not like they were throwing a bunch of things at the net. They just found opportunities and they went in the net, right? The Leafs very rarely do you see them get out hit. They were out hit bad in this game.
Yep.
The physical battle wasn't there.
No, that's what I was saying, right? I mean, none of that was there to get the energy going for this team. It was listless across the board.
And and the Canucks blocked 21 shots, Leafs 14. The Canucks just basically said, like, we're going to keep this very simple. We're going to play a very frustrating style of hockey that's just going to force the Leafs to try to have to do a little more than maybe they're accustomed to, and they just could not pull it out. What exactly, though? What are some maybe little things that we can look at from this game? We'll have to do the good, bad, and the ugly. We're going to do that on the other side here. And plus, there was some news about a potential name that's been linked to the Leafs and whether he's actually going to be available at all heading into the trade deadline. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And if you played any of their promos this weekend, you might have gotten some free money if the Buffalo Bills completed a pass. They did quite a few of those against the Denver Broncos, so you probably cashed in and made a little bit of coin on that one like I did. So if you want to join that, just like myself, just go to FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. We are back here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti. Joining me is James from Offside Hockey Talk, and always a great source of conversation around the Leafs. And if you are wondering where Mike is, he is going to be back. He is on a flight tonight. We're recording this Sunday afternoon because we were watching. So I was watching football. James was, going on doing dad stuff and probably watching football as well. So Mike will be back on not Monday's episode because we're recording Sunday for Monday. He will be back for Tuesday's episode, and I'm sure he'll have a lot of questions about what he had seen, if he was even able to watch that game against Vancouver, which I hope he didn't, because that would have just been a waste of time. He may have played. I guarantee he watched the highlights of that game, and hopefully he did it after his cruise and not while he was on his cruise. That would have been a bad way to end a vacation there. So, as we do with every Leafs loss, this is now the second time in a row we're going to have to do a good, bad, and the ugly. And frankly, I kind of made a joke when I was figuring out what the good, bad, and the ugly was going to be with this. And I said, well, the good thing is the Leafs still got their paychecks from this game, because I could not pick anything good from this game.
Oh, I could.
What was good?
Nick Robertson's effort. Nick Robertson really brought his game. If you're looking for a player in that game that did have some juice and did try to show himself in a good light during a bad game for the rest of the team, he was stripping pucks. He was trying to be physical, winning battles, letting that shot fly. I like those things about Nick Robertson. That's one thing I could say about this game. Hey, that's good. I wish the rest of the team would have had a little bit more of his jump, but he definitely was trying to make things happen, and he was very noticeable. So I'll give him his flowers where they're due. He showed up last night.
See, James the optimist finds something, while I was just like salty Dave could not find anything. And look, I do think that one chance that Nick Robertson had on net, like the one big chance, I mean, it wasn't his only chance, but the one that Lankinen made the amazing save on, that probably was a game-changing moment for both teams. Because if the Leafs score that, if Robertson scores that, there's some juice, there's some potential life. But because they didn't score, Vancouver's just like, well, our goalie just bailed our butts out on a really brilliant save. Let's reward him. And they did, because Lankinen was really good in this game. He was really good in this game. And he's been very important to the Canucks this year. I think there was a graphic that he has like over 80% of their wins this year. Like, without Lankinen, I don't know where the Canucks are, because it's been a tough year. It hasn't been a great year in terms of the expectations are on this Canucks team, but it could be much worse if they did not have Lankinen. So yeah, I'll give Nick Robertson his due, because I think ever since he's come back in the lineup, he is putting himself in a position to stay in this lineup, because he's giving an effort. He is being he's showing himself offensively to be more dialed in than I think he was at the start of the year. I think he's starting to show that comfort in the role he's in right now.
Same could be said too last night about McMahon, another player driving the net, trying to make little things happen here and there. It wasn't there all game. We'll say there was select moments, more so from McMahon, but another player just trying to make his presence felt.
Yeah. Again, I probably think there was times where I thought Max Domi had a little bit of zip, just couldn't really get much on net in that one. So I think that third line was probably
everything was a step off, just one step off, whether it's a pass, a hit, a play, everything was just a step off by them last night.
Yeah. So I do think maybe I'm harsh and not really giving a good, but I just felt like a game like that, it's tough to really find much of a good. Bad. James, what did you think was bad in this game? Because there's bad and there's ugly.
No, well, the ugly, I already have mine picked out. It's like flashing red light in my mind. But bad is exactly what I just said. It's just the timing. It seemed like this team was the team that was coming. I made the tweet last night. I said, geez, what time did the Maple Leafs come in? Because obviously it looked like they were the team that was sleepy, that wasn't ready. They were ill-prepared. Like I said, everything was just a step. So to me, that's bad. And it's on Craig Berube to have this team going. But at the same time, if you have players that are showing you that they are rolling, maybe try to mix things up and get them in the mix and get things going, or ride them a little harder in that game and put some stars on the back burner that aren't really bringing it that night, and just say, hey, if you're going, you're playing. And that's the way it should be. But for me, that's the thing that I'm saying is bad, is the timing and just the way the game was played by the Leafs last night. It was bad across the board. Like I said, step off for passes, step off for hits. Everything just seemed to be missing. It was a misfire night.
Yeah, I think my bad was the power play, because I think and maybe you and I might have a bit of an inverse here, but like you go 0 for 3. There were times in this game where the power play would have given this team life.
Yep.
Right. The Miller one on Nylander, I thought, okay, get a goal. Who knows what happens? The Leafs were actually disciplined. I mean, because the Leafs weren't exactly pushing the envelope physically. Maybe that's why they didn't have any calls go against them. But you go 0 for 3 on the power play. So this can't be a game where people are like, the refs were jobbing the Leafs, because we've heard that one before too. Like, the power play just has not been good. And Craig Berube has made it known his frustrations with the power play. And I think, a lot of people obviously, are talking about what's going on with it. Why is it not doing well? Like, I'm seeing too much plays where I wouldn't call it lazy, but maybe just not crisp. It's there's no purpose when their guys are moving the puck. Like you see how many times teams have gone shorthanded breaks on this unit. Morgan Riley, I don't know what he was doing, but he got so lucky Carson Soucy was offside, because he just decided, I'm going to go play for the other team for a minute here and pass it to Carson Soucy at his own blue line. It's plays like that, little things like that, where you're not crisp with your passes. You're not really pushing the envelope, not attacking. Craig Berube specifically said, shooting the puck, moving it quick, like crisp pace, attacking, shooting at the net. He's essentially saying that the power play has taken away a lot of momentum for this team. I agree with it. Like it's come to the point where this team should not be 19th in power play percentage in the league. With this talent, no. It should be top 10. It has been in the past. And, teams are very happy to let the Leafs play it on the outside boards. They got no point shot. They got there's no
threat.
There's no threat from the point. So it's just like, I know coaching, some people are going to bring up coaching. To me, it's personnel. It's the players, because the players are the ones that have to execute everything. And there's no execution, because it's just the effort's not there for me.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I'm not going to dabble too much on the power play, because that is my ugly. So
okay.
I'll break it wide open when it's my turn for the floor. But yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I do think there is a little onus on Marc Savard as well.
Sure.
But maybe simplifying things and finding it easier, or at least rotating out the players, maybe getting something done. But yeah, no, I agree with you.
Well, look, and Marc Savard, maybe you have to try a different strategy. Or maybe you go and you actually tell some players, you know what, if this is how you're going to play on the power play, then why bother? We don't need you on the power play. Like, to me, that's the next step there. It's just like, if you are not going to take the 2 minutes that you get and every opportunity you have on the man advantage to try your best to either in a situation like this, get your team back in the game, or if you have a lead and you get a power play, to put yourself in an advantageous position, why are they on the ice? Oh, because they are getting paid a lot of money? Too bad. Then you know what? Start earning that money by performing on the power play. Like, it's so frustrating. That game was just one of the most frustrating ones to watch, just because I'm sure a lot of people are like, the arena was dead. Well, the team, you feed off.
There's nothing to cheer about.
Yeah, you feed off what the players are doing. If the players aren't giving you a reason to cheer, you're not going to cheer. So to me, like, it was a bad and ugly situation for the power play. But my ugly was going into this game, morning skate, Craig Berube went off on the team. He was swearing at them. telling them that their effort wasn't enough. In morning skate, you knew something was brewing at that point.
Yep.
So they go and they have that type of game. Then comes the post-game press conference. Now, some people have told me I may be too harsh about this, but when I have one player in Chris Tanev saying, I'm going to read his words as it was said, outworked us, outcompeted us, and that's why they won. We need to play our game better. That's why we lost. We're not connected as five. We're not helping, supporting each other. And that's why they took advantage of us and scored some goals. Chris Tanev, pretty good assessment of what went wrong.
Yep.
Let's go and fast forward to what Mitch Marner had to say about the Leafs' effort. I liked it. I mean, I thought we played well. I really did. Highlight that word. I really did. I think just last couple of games, we've been giving up plays to teams that aren't missing on them. To me, you have one player saying one thing, and then you have another player saying another thing. And where's the cohesion? There's no cohesion on the ice in that game. There's no cohesion in the messaging off the ice because not a single player should be trying to do any positive spin off that game. Okay. Austin Matthews also in a little way tried to pass it by. I thought we had chances, just couldn't capitalize. Couldn't get momentum on our side. There was a bit of he wasn't as he didn't put in the way I wanted the captain to put it, which to me, Tanev spoke more like a captain in that moment, right? Than we got from even Morgan Riley. If you look at the score afterwards, it doesn't look good, but it's a close game. It's not a close game, no, because you didn't score a single goal. So to me, the ugly is the habits on the ice need to change, but the habits off the ice, I got to start changing too. Because I'm not sounding no alarms. It's 2 losses in a row. It hasn't really happened that many times this year. It's been they went on a stretch where they had won 5 games in a row. They didn't lose 5 games to start 2025. I'm not going to be sounding no alarms, but man, you got to get some better attitude because we've heard this how many years in a row and after games like this. If this was Vancouver, and they spoke like this after the game, man, the media would have them in Vancouver, and people complain about the Toronto media. Vancouver media would have been
there'd been a field day. It'd have been a field day.
God. People were getting mad at Steve Simmons after the game. Steve Simmons called Mitch Marner delusional, and I was agreeing with Steve Simmons. Marner, what are you doing to me here, bud? I'm not usually.
Listen, I will honestly tell you, this team here, there needs to be a little bit of a reality check. It reminds me of when the Leafs were first in the Canadian division and Joe Thornton was like, Sheldon, you're worrying about too many little things. We're first. The Leafs are first in the Atlantic right now, and maybe a little bit of that is rattling around in their brains like, hey, we're the Cats meow. We're first in the Atlantic. Let's go. They were tied with the Capitals there for a moment for first in the Eastern Conference. That was the thing. Maybe a little complacency, maybe a little bit of non-urgency by this team. But when you have a guy like Chris Tanev that has gone on long playoff runs, seeing and saying these things is because he knows what it takes to go on a run and do what is necessary to not only win hockey games, but also get yourself deeper into the playoffs, which is something Leaf fans, we know this team has not done. So who am I going to side with here? I will side with the Craig Berubes. I will side with the Chris Tanevs because no, it is not fine. No, the effort was not there. No, the chances were not minimal where you could have scored goals and done things. No, there was no effort. Chris Tanev is correct. This team needs to bring it for a full 60 every single night. And yes, there will be nights where they win games that they shouldn't and lose games that they should win. We all understand that you're not going to win them all, but show up with effort. And that is what Chris Tanev is talking about. If you lose, just say 3-2, and you brought the effort all night long, but you just didn't get that one goal, you can draw positives from that. Getting shut out, getting skunked on your power play, having your building booing you out of the arena, and it being so quiet you could probably hear a pin drop, that is a problem, especially on a Saturday night. So yes, Chris Tanev, I support what he's saying. I will never support Steve Simmons. I don't care if he is right. Don't like the guy. Don't like what he says. But anyways, Mitch, you got to give your head a shake, man. Chris Tanev knows what he's talking about. Watched runs happen. That's the guy you want to follow. And yes, you're right, Dave. He was talking as a captain, as Austin frickin' Matthews should. He has a C in his chest. He should be calling out his team and saying, we need to do better.
Yeah. And look, it's not like when they were winning a few of those games last week that they were playing clean hockey either. Outplayed in Philly, won that game because Joseph Woll, carried them. The game against Philly before that, they played all right, but Philly was in that game still. The one against Boston, they were playing pretty well, and then Boston pushed back, and they didn't push back themselves, and it was a closer game than it should have been, especially with Matthew and I scoring the hat.
It's just coasting when you feel like you're doing good, and that's the Carolina game in a nutshell. They're up 2-0, took their foot off the gas, and got hit out of the building.
It's just, we hear Craig Berube say, we need more energy. We need to play with more energy. You don't want your coach saying that because he's, in a way, he's calling out the effort.
Yeah.
Right. He's just spinning it in a different way. Yeah. And so I think the Leafs really do need to, hopefully, again, a wake up call, because their next game is against Dallas. Like, they're not getting it's not going to get easier. And we're talking about being first place in the Atlantic. Your next 4 games: Stars, Devils, Canadians, Lightning. It ain't going to be easy. And those teams, if you are not ready for them, like, I know Montreal is lower in the standings, but they're not.
Montreal was in a playoff spot last week. There's such a logjam there. You can't take them lightly. They want to be in the mix.
They beat you this year. They shut you out. Don't forget that one, right? So, yeah, like this again, you can very much have that Atlantic lead shrink if you don't pick your what up going forward. Now, we're going to toss that game aside, because now that game is done, and we're going to burn that up from our memory if we possibly can. And we're going to talk about a player that many have thought the Leafs could potentially trade for. Doesn't look like that's even going to be a potential possibility. Maybe this is Barry Trotz playing a little. I might be giving away a little bit, but Barry Trotz playing a little chess game around the NHL. We'll see. Let's discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I found a few subscriptions that I didn't realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place and saves everybody money. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon to find out how you can go and save some money. We are back here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti joined here by James from Offside Hockey Talk. And, with everything that's been going on with this team, and we've heard the trade stuff, and we've heard what they need to, go and get the trade deadline. Feels like that's going to always change in terms of what they need, although maybe less so now when we're seeing how they played the last few games. But one thing we are being led to believe is one of those targets that the Leafs have or have been potentially linked to. I don't know if they want him or they've been trying to trade for him or even contemplate trading for him. But essentially, Barry Trotz is telling the rest of the NHL, don't call me about Ryan O'Reilly. Don't even mention his name. Well,
which means call me about Ryan O'Reilly.
Elliot Friedman on Hockey Night in Canada in the Saturday headlines said that the Nashville Predators are treating Ryan O'Reilly as if he has no move protection, which is like he has a no trade clause. Which, if I am correct, he does not have a no trade clause.
He doesn't. He has no trade protection at all.
None. And look, it's funny because the Nashville Predators are not one to really give no trade clause, but they just did with the 3 players that they signed in the they brought actually Philip Forsberg has a no movement clause, but he's like a franchise player for them.
Yeah.
Stamkos and Marchessault both got some trade protection. Stamkos got a full new move. Marchessault got a modified no trade clause, and Brady Shea got a full no movement clause. But Ryan O'Reilly did not. And it's interesting because, maybe this is a GM trying to drive up prices. Maybe this is a GM that's just, probably getting a lot of calls on Ryan O'Reilly and is maybe getting a little tired of the phone ringing all the time on Ryan O'Reilly and just trying to say, don't call me about him because he's not up for sale. What do you make of this though? Like in a twofold sort of sense. One is, do you buy it? And 2, if you're the Leafs, are you not happy about it?
I don't buy it for a second. Everyone has a price. Let's go $1 million man. But I look at it like this and say, what better way to maximize the assets you will get than telling everyone this guy's not available? Then you have to knock on the door and say, hey, Barry, listen, I know you said he's not available, but what if we give you this package right here with all of this? And then it's like, oh, well, maybe that really moves the needle. Then the next guy calls you and says, well, X is giving me this. Have you up it a little bit more here? And then, well, now Y's called over there, and now the offer is this big, right? So how do you do it and make a bidding war? You say there's nothing there, and this guy doesn't want to move. So at the end of the day, if they get what they're asking for this guy, and it can really help them either expedite whatever rebuild they want to do or augment this lineup enough where it jumpstarts it, they're going to do it. They'd be crazy not to. It's not working, obviously. I know he's a leader. We liked him here in Toronto for that reason. Didn't like the way he exited. Never want him back. Go away. See you later. If the limelight's not for you, then don't let the door hit you on the butt on the way out, because I don't want you here. If you don't want to play for basically the team you grew up rooting for when you were a kid, see you later. Give me a Yanni Gourde and I'll be happy.
Oh, you're on the Yanni Gourde train. That's interesting.
Well, that's a playoff guy, man. I want a playoff guy. I want someone who can play in the bottom 6 or move up if he needs to, but really can bring a little snot and vinegar and help out your penalty kill.
When I see what's going on with Ryan O'Reilly, and if I'm the Leafs, like that's not a 1-year commitment you're making. It's not a rental. We know that, and we know the Leafs are preferring a player with term,
term they can sign to, from what I heard.
Yeah,
so like you get a guy and the extension is there when they're talking trade. If that can be worked out, that's what they would prefer. Someone they can probably put on a 3 to 4 year deal.
If you're giving up assets, you don't want it to be for a 30 game, not even 30 games, maybe a 20 game sample, depending on how many games the guy even plays, especially including the playoffs. So I look at this Ryan O'Reilly situation too, and thinking like teams should not want to also clean up Nashville's mess for them. Like,
that's another thing. Yep.
You're looking at a team there that was seen as the winners of the offseason. They made all those moves. You know what? Let them have to figure it out for themselves how to get out of it. I get it. Ryan O'Reilly, he's a guy that went and won a cup. I know people brought up the Craig Berube relationship, but I don't think it's the coach that's going to change Ryan O'Reilly's feelings about a city, an organization, media, all those things.
He didn't like the media. He didn't like the pressure.
Yeah. So you know what? Like, you might there's other players out there. There's other players being linked. It might just have to be, you know what? Just close that door. And if Nashville's really game to move them, you know what? Go call the Leafs with an offer. Because if I'm Brad Treliving, I'm not batting. What's the best way to put it? I'm not leaving that line open if it's just not going to be worth the time and
Listen, Nashville's struggling too. What does Elliot Friedman always say? Teams don't throw you life preservers when you're sinking. They throw you anvils. So hopefully no one bails this team out. And, they have to eat these contracts and try to figure it out. I thought for real, though, Dave, we're being honest, I thought Nashville was going to be a hot ticket team this year and really take a next step, especially with guys like Yossi and, UC Saros and Ned and Forsberg, and then adding these guys to the mix. Obviously, it altered the chemistry a little bit.
Well, that's it, right? And Trotz is kind of like, well, don't know exactly where I'm going to go with this, right? Like, there's no easy fix for what's happening over there in Nashville, and he committed a boatload of money in turn to a lot of guys. So those are not easy fixes for a lot of teams. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Nashville. I mean, they already gave up like a guy like Dante Fabro for nothing. And look, he's in a playoff position right now with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Maybe it's not some of the players, and maybe it's some of the moves that have been made by management, because it's just ugly right now in Nashville. 33, they're 13, 22, and 7 this year.
What was said is they still think that they can climb out of it.
I don't know, man. Like the team that's got the second wild card is Calgary with 47 points. That's a 14-point gap. I'm sorry. There's no second half missing the sphere sort of win streak that you're going to go on like you did last year. That was an unbelievable run. But that's a huge gap. So now unless a few teams decide to not play very well and Nashville just goes on a rampage, which I don't foresee that happening. Yeah, be interesting to see what Nashville does. But it looks like Ryan O'Reilly right now, don't call him, because he's apparently going to be stuck in that situation for the next little while. And maybe this is just Barry Trotz saying we'll just have to hope again for next year. Quick one before we go, James. When you look at the Leafs' last 2 games, what's one move coming out of this that you want to see from Craig Berube as we prepare for next week?
Well, one thing that we will see this week, hopefully, obviously, is Jake McCabe back in the lineup. But if I'm Craig Berube, I'm saying bye-bye to Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner together. Those guys are on separate lines to me. Also, I'm saying bye-bye to what is the power play unit right now as well. I'm putting Matthew Nyes back on that first unit as a net front presence. And I don't care if feelings get hurt. If you got to bump JT to unit 2, say la vie, mes amis, you got to have the guys on the ice that we're clicking at a rate. If you want Matthews on the number 1 unit, great. That's fine. But you need a big body in front of that net. Nyes has got to be that guy. And just switch it up a little bit. Make teams start guessing. Because right now, you're not having any fluidity on that power play. You're not passing that puck. You're not having bodies moving. So change it up. Those are the 2 things I think are going to happen. You're going to see them separate Matthews and Marner, and you're going to see the power play get changed. If not, we might be in for a repeat week.
Yeah, I do think that it might be time to keep Matthews and Nyes together, because we know the 2 of them have played well together.
Perfect.
Might be time to put Marner back with JT, and it just has not worked. I know they had a really good game against Boston, but it hasn't looked good, guys. It hasn't looked good against teams that are upper competition. They got outplayed by Jordan Stahl. Okay, they got outplayed by a checking line, and they got outplayed by Vancouver. Like, we're talking about Mitch Marner as a Selke candidate, potentially a Hart Trophy candidate. Elias Pettersson, who was having the biggest struggles. It was his second game back from an injury. Everyone was talking about him as a Selke player and not Mitch Marner. He got out
plays all night.
Right, he was making the defensive efforts all night, and obviously I think he had a couple points against the Leafs too. So you know what? I think Craig Berube, he tried to send the message on the ice by yelling at them at practice. Other button the coach can press. All right, some guys have got to move. We'll see if they do that. Craig Berube has always kind of been. He moves guys and people around. We'll see if maybe he decides to do that again going into this week.
I think it happens, man.
Well, We'll find out. We'll find out here next on the Locked On Leafs podcast. On the next episode, we will most likely be discussing hopefully a return to practice, seeing who is back on the ice. Jake McCabe has been skating on his nose. Let's see if he is back practicing with the team. That'll be a big indicator whether he is close to return, because God, they need Jake McCabe back. They need a lot of players to pick up the game on the ice too. So we'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. Make sure you go and follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll be back with an episode tomorrow. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.